We're just going to dive right in and we're going to start at the beginning.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's start with, who are you in the SCA and what titles do you have?
All right. In the SCA, not in persona, Amanda DeSpencer. And let's see. I am the daughter of Robert and Leah DeSpencer. And the titles that I own myself, or have earned myself, would be, let's see. I am a Griffin of Artemisia. I am a court baroness. I have been a territorial baroness, and thus I've got a second court barony. I have numerous numbers of arts awards, including local baronial. I am a duck and a lark, and I have my golden maple leaf, and I have my Keys Cross, and I have the keys to the kingdom. Seriously, that's an award. They gave me the keys to the kingdom. I don't think they realized what they were getting into. And I also have my pelican.
Wonderful. You're a busy lady. So how long have you been participating in the SCA?
Since I was about 8 years old.
Oh, so you're a generational SCA player.
Well, you see, I'm kind of in this weird position because when you talk about second generation SCA players, you're usually talking about people who met, married, grew up, then had kids who joined the SCA. But I actually was part of that first generation, but I came into it as children of people who were playing. So it puts me in kind of a different area than most of the second generational people. But I've experienced many of the things that the second generation players have, and also I have that first generation experience. So yes, it's generational because also my kids play, but it's kind of an odd position for me.
What is your persona, and have you always played that part?
Let's see. Persona, Amanda DeSpencer. She is the daughter of the DeSpencers, who historically have lands on the borders of Wales and on the borders of Scotland. Her father is a second son, and as such did not get the primary lands on the borders of Scotland. Those were given to his older brother David. Now, Amanda grew up on the border between England and Wales, where her mother, who is a very strong Welsh woman, has titles and holdings. Her mother's twin sister, Sister Scholastica, provided the education for both she and her sister Aegina at the very early age. So from very early on, Amanda and Aegina both received a high quality education. They are above average. They have above average skills in reading and ciphering in order that they would never shame their mother in the holdings of their property. Amanda tended to stray away from the proper scriptural and religious readings that she was supposed to be reading, and was absolutely fascinated by the romances and stories. She fell in love with a wandering minstrel who then was adopted by her father, since they had but 2 girls in the family. Now, this husband of hers went off to war and never came back. Now, in her time of mourning, she returned to her family's holdings, and they took a trip out to their Scottish lands to visit with their uncle. During this trip, she met with a young Thorold son by the name of Aylwin. Now, he had just recently returned from Spain, where he was working in service to the king. Now, he was so entranced with Amanda that he chased her back to Wales in order to ask her father for her hand in marriage. This being a second marriage, Amanda certainly had a full say in it, and so after some courting and wooing, she agreed. Now, as a wedding gift, her uncle gave her a title to some of the lands in Arundel, which was also the area that Aylwin's father had been Thorold for. So the two of them hold these lands together, both paying taxes in order to keep both kings at bay, and thus can have a relatively easy and peaceful time on their holdings.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. How do you play your persona in the SCA?
Depends on the particular venue, because there are times and places where being fully in persona is the appropriate response. And there are times when a more hybrid version of myself is also appropriate. So really it depends on how the moment is as to whether or not I am fully Amanda or whether I'm the Amanda Janice combination that we all have to play, is because we all know that while we're doing historical reenactment, we're also just hanging with our friends. And in truth, Amanda would have nothing to do with some of the people that I actually hang with, mostly because she would have never run across them ever in her entire life.
True, true. So how do you make things or do things that show your persona's story?
In essence, I try to do that with my interactions. Now, Aylwin and I recently served as Baron and Baroness, and one of the ways in which I tried to be the very best Baroness possible was remembering that Amanda had lived through the Great Plague, and she had seen her entire life change, and had also watched landholders who had not respected the change, because all of a sudden, as landholders, you actually needed the people to work the lands more than they needed you. And if you were not respectful and kind and taking care of your people, they would go find other lands to work where they were being treated well. So I kept that idea in the back of my mind as I was working with and being a part of the SCA, in that as a proper medieval lady of my time period, respect and kindness would have to have been the order of the day.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. What advice would you share with someone interested in joining the SCA?
Okay, first of all, this is ridiculous amounts of fun, because there isn't a hobby that you've ever imagined that we can't help you with. If you like cooking, I got some people. If you like sewing, I've got some people. If you want armor smithing, singing, dancing, name it. This is a hobby that literally allows you to explore every part of who you want to be. And it does so in a way that celebrates that uniqueness of who you are. So come and play with us. Forget about being a modern programmer or teacher or journalist or surveyor or whatever it is that you do. Bring those skills, because I guarantee you we need them. But come play with us.
What is one thing you love most about this organization / game / dream?
The fact that we try to inspire people to be their best selves, that we ask of them to take hold of the words of honor and chivalry and to embody that in a world that seems to reward cheating, in a world that seems to reward people playing the system. And instead, we try to recognize those who step above and beyond that societal expectation to really reach for a dream, and a dream that does not need to nor should ever pass away, because it's the better part of ourselves, the more honorable part. And I have to admit that growing up and dating and things like that, I found that my experiences in the society set a very, very high standard for me as far as who I was willing to accept in my life. And that standard was only, unless that standard was met, I was very friendly, I was very nice, but it could never be something serious, because if you didn't know what it meant to be honorable and chivalrous, you weren't going to fit into my world.
So what is your ideal What's the word? I struggle with this question because for everybody, I ask it slightly differently. What would be your ideal moment in the dream?
Ideal moment in the dream. That's tough. Partly because there are so many. The first time that I saw a coronation, and I saw one person who had honorably served stepping down and stepping aside to allow someone else to take the throne. That was a magical moment for me. Sitting beside the campfire with people that I love dearly, our voices lifting in song, some songs that are being sung in languages that I don't understand, but they take me to a place and a time that I want to be. The stars sparkling overhead, the sounds of drums in the distance, the laughter and of people that I just hold so dear. The first time somebody fought for me and they turned to salute me from the field, and my heart just, it went up to my throat, and I actually got tears in my eyes because that person was out there fighting, not just because they love hitting people with sticks, but because for that moment, they were fighting for me, as though I was somebody special, as though I was important. And I felt for just a moment that magic. Offering fealty to the crown. When I am looking up and I am swearing, and I mean every word when I am swearing fealty, and I am looking at two people and the look of awe that hits their face when they look out at the populace and they feel the gravitas of that moment, that's magic. And being on the other side of that and receiving oaths of service, holy cow, what a humbling experience. It's like nothing I could even begin to describe. I feel like there's no amount of service that I could give to the populace that could make up for the love and the trust that they placed in us at that moment. Having a friend of mine want to create something, all of those are magical moments. It's not that there is a moment, it's a storyline. And that story continues on. And that's what actually keeps me coming back, is that nobody wrote the end yet. And because there isn't a the end yet, there's more to this story. There's more adventure, there's more magic. And so I keep coming back because I got to read that next chapter. And besides, I get to play a part in it too. How cool is that?
Oh, it's beautiful. I love when you speak the language of joy for the SCA. That's how I hear that when I've heard you speak these things to other people, and it comes across in my own interpretation as a language of joy in this game, because as we all know, real life intrudes, and sometimes that brings you down a little bit, and the language of joy can lift you up in any circumstance.
Yay.
Okay, I'm gonna change slightly topics here.
Okay.
What is your art in the SCA?
My beloved husband calls it the art du jour, because I'm a project-based artist. So somebody says, Amanda, I need tokens for a something or other. So I learn how to do pewter casting. Amanda, I just don't have anything to wear. So I learn how to sew Italian wren. Amanda, we need a scroll for something or other. So I learn calligraphy and illumination. In truth, I love all of the arts and I want to participate in all of them. I am not necessarily great at anything, but I do so with love. And so every scroll, every piece of pottery, every piece of jewelry, every piece of anything that I do, I'm doing it because I love the person that I'm making it for. So if you get a gift from me, please realize that it was not necessarily made with a lot of skill, but look at the fact that it was made with a ton of love.
Beautiful. So tell me more about music. I know that you are very involved in the music scene in the SCA. So tell me all about that.
Of course. Now, I didn't include that in my arts because art is something you do. Music is just something that I am. From the time that my earliest memories, my family sang together in the car. And we would go on motorcycle trips, and the entire pathway was filled with songs, folk songs, Kingston Trio, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And then we found the SCA. And when we found the SCA, there was this whole new genre of music to play with. And I would actually put together kids' bardics because I wasn't allowed at the grown-up bardics for a long time because I was just a kid. And you know how sometimes we dismiss kids because they're just kids. And besides, we want to sing grown-up things, and we don't necessarily want the kids there hearing the grown-up things. So I would put together kid bardics, and we would sing together as kids, sometimes on key, more often not, but with great joy. And I found that music was one of the best ways for me to understand history. In truth, I think that I learned more about history of the Middle Ages or any other time period by listening to the music written at that time than I could from any number of texts that I could read. Because music carries with it more than just the words, it carries with it the emotion. So singing the ballads from the borderlands, or singing songs of victories, or singing songs of defeat, they tell a story. And that story is part of what makes the SCA. So I try to interweave with my singing, not only songs of actual history, but songs of SCA history too. Because once again, you'll learn a whole lot more about the SCA from listening to the songs we love than you will from reading any number of doctoral theses, and there have been some written about the SCA. I have probably sung in every kingdom in the continental United States. There are many events that I will go to, and the first thing I hear is, Amanda, will you be coming to our encampment to sing for us? And it makes my heart all warm and fuzzy and makes me feel super happy because I will sing regardless if anyone is listening or not because I love song, but it makes my heart really happy to know that others take pleasure in in the gifts that I can give.
Do you play any musical? That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. Do you play any musical instruments?
I play the guitar. I am learning how to play the hammer dulcimer. It is a long time coming because it is not coming naturally to me. I play the sitar, and that's another one that is coming. Sir Bartholomew made me a beautiful sitar, and I'm working very hard to make sure that I don't embarrass him at the gift. Primarily stringed instruments are what I focus on because of the folk music history. Mm-hmm. We would go camping and my parents would have their guitars. In fact, my father was a part of a folk music band when he was in his teens. And so there's been a lot of that element that has been a part of my growing up.
I understand.
Guitars are much, much easier to carry around places than many another instrument.
That is true. I understand that you also host bardics in your local area. You do singing get-togethers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, about once a month for a long time. Now, obviously, during our current situation, we aren't doing that, except I have participated in a couple of virtual bardics, but it's not quite the same. I will invite people to come over to my house, and we'll sit around and we'll share that music. And the rules of the game are, I pass out music books so people never feel like they don't have anything to work with. That you can point at a song and say, I want to hear that one. I don't know what it sounds like. Could somebody help me with that? You can say, Sir Robert, I want you to sing something. You can say, I have something that I would like to share or present. Or you can say, I'm just here for the music, and you can pass. And we'll do that starting usually around 6 o'clock-ish, and it will usually go until about 9, although I have had some that have gone till 4 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I bailed. At about 3:30, I'm like, guys, you know where you're sleeping. Peace. Love you all, but I've got to bail on this.
Wonderful. Well, is there anything else you would like to share about the SCA and your journey in the SCA?
Well, let me talk to you about the Flower of Chivalry momentarily. A number of years ago, my parents, who were Baron and Baroness of Lochsollen at the time, were listening to some of their peers saying, well, I'm a peer. My journey's done. The SCA has nothing more that it can offer to me. And my parents looked at that and thought that that was a very silly idea. And so they came up with the origins for what is now the Fleur d'Or, or the Flower of Chivalry, which is basically a survey of all of the different things that you can do in the SCA. In order to earn your Flower of Chivalry, or your Fleur d'Or, you need to participate in heavy combat. Now, you don't necessarily have to get into armor, but you have to at least understand it well enough so that you can speak on it comfortably. You have to have a similar level of understanding of rapier fighting. You have to have participated in the thrown weapons and the archery. You have to understand enough about medieval warfare that if given an area of land, you could design and build your own fortress, and that would be defensible in your particular period style. You need to be able to play medieval games. You need to be able to entertain others. You need to be able to participate in the arts. You need to be of service. You need to know your own persona. You need to have supported your local group by being an officer. And all of these things together, if you think that you've arrived and you do the Fleur d'Or pattern, you're going to find things that you will have a passion about you would have never guessed, simply because you were asked to stretch yourself outside your comfort zone.
That's beautiful. I love how you explain that. That's perfect. I've heard other people explain it, but you always do it better. Okay, well, that's pretty much it. If oh, one other thing I can cut and splice in this. If somebody wanted to contact you to ask you more detailed information about how you play music, how you get involved in that in the SCA, how would they get in touch with you?
Amanda DeSpencer at hotmail.com.
Thank you.
Although actually, your best bet, find me on Facebook. I'm afraid that email is like so passé anymore.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, and I have really enjoyed this, and I'm sure the audience will enjoy it as well. Thank you.
Glad to be of service.